How's it going, guys? Happy New Year. Obviously not the great way to start 2021, but sure, I'm sure they'll have us back in school as quick as is humanly possible. Anyhow, I suppose first off, your exams. Some of you got the result back off me before we finished, and the exams were really, really good. Very, very, very strong. The grades and the comments are in your reports already, so as far as I know, they're going out sometime towards the end of the week, so you'll have the grades for science. But really, really good. I'll hang on to the scripts and I'll get them back to you as soon as I can. So obviously, from at this stage, you know the way I like to teach science. You know the way I like to keep it as practical as possible and get you working together and using the scientific method and as you work through learning outcomes. But I suppose what it means is we have to revert back to fairly traditional methods, and we'll keep going. We'll tick off learning outcomes, and what it'll leave us with then when we get back to school in February is with a load of practical to catch up on. Hopefully what we do over the next 3 weeks, we'll have a class today, Tuesday, and we'll have a class on Thursday. We'll see about doing live. I'm easy either way, do it live on Thursday or doing a pre-recorded one like this, but it's up to you. I was going to think about starting CBA and get you to starting that at home, but if the junior cert is to be curtailed in June, which it could be because of closures, you wouldn't know. CBA 1 would probably be the first thing to go, so it wouldn't be a clever thing to do CBA now, because it might not happen. So we'll leave it to the date we were going to do it in, which is April. We do it over a 2-week thing in April. So we're going to go on and we're going to go back and tick off a learning outcome this week, which is in Earth and Space. And I'll give you the notes, give you the questions, a bit of an assignment, and we'll see how you get on with that. Okay? Right, so we're going to the OneNote. So our OneNote here, and here's obviously second year science 2020. And I go to the content library here. I started doing CBA 1 and then I thought better of it. So we're going into the cycles of the Earth, which is just here. And we're going to look at 2 cycles. We're going to look at the water cycle and the carbon cycle. And I suppose you've probably done this. People who are saying to me, oh, we did this in primary school and made the water cycle using cotton wool and licorice and all this kind of stuff. And we did it in geography again then in secondary school. Great. It's on the junior cycle science exam. It'll be an easy one for us to go through, which is grand. Okay. So it's looking a bit funny there on the page, but I'll fix that. Here's the learning outcome up here. So this one here, this is what is off the specification of the syllabus. So this is what they say that we need to know. So students should be able to describe the cycling of matter. So matter as it moves around and around and around and around, because matter is constant in the universe, in particular that of carbon and that of water. So carbon cycle and the water cycle, associating with biological and atmospheric phenomena. So we did a bit about the moon and the effect the moon has, so this kind of links to that as well. Okay, so we'll have a quick look down through these 2. So the water cycle, obviously water, fairly important, we don't do too bad without it. But our bodies are made up of around 70% water. So you're about 70% water. And about 80% of the Earth's surface is covered in water. So you can often say how much of the Earth's surface is water. Water is moving from the Earth's surface to the clouds, back to the Earth again as rain and snow. And this affects our climate. And you have these different habitats that suit different animals, so you kind of wonder why we don't have. You're not going to wander down into Blanchevillage and get bitten by a rattlesnake. Well, because our climate doesn't suit rattlesnakes. Too cold, and the water moisture content, the humidity is not right for certain types of animals. That's why we don't have those weird animals here in Ireland. But the idea behind the water cycle is that it's all in a cycle. You can see it going up this way, and then it goes across this way, and then it comes back down this way, and then it goes back across, and then it goes up. So you're going in a circular kind of way on the diagram there. It doesn't really start anywhere or end anywhere, like a wheel of a bike. Where's the start and the end of it? So if you do it as it's in this picture here, number 1 over here is we have evaporation. So your keywords there are going to be evaporation, and it evaporates from the water up into the clouds. When it gets up into the clouds, you have another keyword there, it condenses. Remember, from distillation, condensing is turning of a gas, you have water vapour first off as it goes up in this line here, and then it turns into a liquid, so droplets of water. When it becomes water, it's blown by the wind in these cloudy things across until it hits land. And when it hits land, it cools down, and it falls down as rain. So as it cools down, it then falls down as rain. And when it falls down as rain, it goes down these rivery things here, back to the sea, and the whole thing starts again. Unless we try and do something with it. Sometimes we like to drink water. So sometimes we divert it to things like reservoirs, and we send it to houses down here. Or we use it in power plants, or we use it in sewage works and clean it. So we might go from the houses. The houses add stuff to it from toilets and sinks and stuff like that, and then it has to be cleaned over here, and then it goes back. But it's still all of this part here is just slowing it down on its way back to where it's going to end up over here back in the sea. Okay, so we'll have a look at a few of those things. If you think about the whole thing in Ireland about the water charges and what they were charging you for, and the argument was it's a natural resource, and it is a natural resource, but people like it nice and clean and chlorinated and the bacteria taken out of it and the fluoride added to it and all these kind of things. So that's really what the payment, I suppose they were trying to get us to pay for. People like it to come to your house in maybe a clean pipe as opposed to a dirty one. And then when it leaves the house, they like it taken away somewhere else and cleaned before it's sent back to your house again. But the whole idea of these carbon and water things is that they're cycles. And so the water in your tap, the clean water you take out and you take a big drink of nice cold water in the morning, was probably in someone's toilet a couple of days before. Probably came down as rain a couple of days before. It was probably could have been in your neighbour's house the week before. And it's cycle. And the amount of water we had at the time the planet was formed is the same amount of water we have now. It just goes round and round and round and round. Okay, and we said that what happens on its way back to the sea. So it might just go down the river and straight back into the sea. But what could happen? Well, when we did energy, we looked at the different how we generate energy, and one of the ways was we could use hydroelectric energy using a dam. And in a hydroelectric dam, potential energy, like we saw in an elastic band or a spring, is converted to electrical energy. Some go to the houses, some go to industry for drinking or for using for some sort of process. Before we use it, we have to filter it to take things, actual physical things out of it. And we have to add chlorine. Chlorine kills bacteria, kills all the viruses that you don't want to be drinking in your water. Water that has been used by factories will also need to be treated. If it was released into rivers, it would lead to growth of algae. So this green stuff you see on ponds, algae. So if we go back up here, this part here, see this part here? That is a treatment plant. So after it's used by the factory here, in this part here, it needs to be treated over here in 9. So if it has to go through 8, through industry, then it has to be treated at 9 before it's released back into the sea. Or we end up with the blue flag being taken off the beach and no one can go for an El-Snav, and it causes all sorts of problems. If you put too much algae in, you get this growth called eutrophication. And if you get this kind of green, slimy algae, and loads of algae means it leads to eutrophication, what happens is the algae uses up all the oxygen in the water. So algae remove the oxygen from the water. If there's no oxygen in the water, nothing else can live in the water, which means the fish die. And then, obviously, you have swimming issues. Okay. The benefits of the water cycle. Without the water cycle, the land would be a desert. So we wouldn't have water. If the water for some reason went up, evaporated up into the clouds, and then somehow managed to go up and out through the ozone layer, and didn't come back down, didn't circulate back down, then the land would be a desert. And then we'd have to artificially add land or artificially add water in order to grow plants and fruits and all the things that we like to eat. And that means cost. Be much more expensive. So if we didn't have the water cycle, we'd have a lack of clean water. This makes it safe. So if you evaporate it and take the salt out of it, you make it safe to it's safe to drink. And if the water cycle did not exist, our only option would be to use seawater. Problem with seawater is the salt in it. So we would have to desalinate the seawater. So if you live somewhere really warm, where there's not much rain, like Israel or Saudi Arabia, you might have noticed, if anyone who's been to Gran Canaria, as you leave the airport, there's big white fields full of salt. And they have to evaporate the water to leave the salt in seawater. But it's extremely expensive, whether you want the salt or whether you want the water. If you want to take the salt out of water or the water out of salt, it's an expensive process. Okay? All right. There's a little video here you can watch. So you see this link here. It's a nice video that explains the water cycle. So I'll let you have a look at that in your own time. It kind of goes through all the stuff that we've been doing up here to have a look. But just remember the parts of the cycle. The same things you did in geography, same things you did in junior cert. How it goes from the sea to the clouds, over the mountain, comes down as precipitation of rain, snow, that kind of thing, down through the rivers, and back to the sea. It might be diverted away from the sea to things like houses, things like houses, things like industry. Then if it goes through industry, it has to be cleaned before it goes back to the sea, and the process starts again. But like I said, it doesn't start or end anywhere. Because it's a cycle, like a wheel. Okay. Now, this one you might not have done. I'm not sure if this is on the geography course. It could be. But because it's one you wouldn't be as familiar with, this is the one you're probably going to have to learn. You'll probably tell me, we know this inside out, upside down in 9 different languages, but the carbon cycle might be something you don't know. So all living things contain carbon. You will be described as a carbon-based life form. Your body is 20% carbon. They might say this, compare the amount of carbon and water in the body. So 20% carbon. Go back up and look how much water makes up the body. Carbon is just as important. Your body is constantly burning. So your body burns compounds of carbon to keep you alive. So you might remember we did food in first year. You had fats and proteins and carbohydrates and all these things. They're all carbon. They're all just carbon in different forms, and you'll have to wait for leaving cert chemistry before you can kind of go into the different ways the carbon bonds to form different compounds. You breathe out carbon dioxide. Again, first year, breathing system. You take in oxygen, you breathe out carbon dioxide. And plants also depend on carbon to stay alive. They take in carbon dioxide and make food and oxygen from it. So we have this kind of arrangement with plants. We use the oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, and the plants kind of say to us, yeah, sound, we'll take the carbon dioxide and we give you oxygen. And we go, great, that's a great deal. We made that deal a long time ago, and it's a fabulous deal. We on Thursday we'll be going into the way that the humans have broken that contract, and we're kind of throwing out stacks of carbon dioxide. So we're making it very, very difficult for plants to keep up their end of the bargain by taking in all the carbon dioxide, because we're cutting down trees to build stuff and then releasing loads of carbon dioxide. We get to greenhouse gases and global warming again the next time. Okay, so the concentration of carbon dioxide has increased by 35%. That's important. And this is what all the global warming, Greta Thunberg stuff is about. The carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is increasing all the time. And that is what causes global warming and climate change, amongst other gases, sulfur dioxide and that as well. But carbon dioxide is a big culprit. So a couple of things that are causing it. One is industry, and two is natural processes. So things like volcanoes, forest fires, decaying plants and animals, us breathing, that's causing carbon dioxide to be released. So we could stop most of those, that'd help. But generally people kind of like breathing and that. So the easier ones to kind of get a hold on are industrial processes. 2.7 litre diesel cars flying all over the world in these big jumbo things. They're the kind of ways that you can reduce they talk about carbon footprint, reduce the amount of carbon that you're releasing into the atmosphere. and that could stop the planet heating up. Here's your carbon cycle here, okay? So again, it's a cycle, so it doesn't really start anywhere. But I suppose if we started up here, because this is when we know humans burning fossil fuels, and the fossil fuels go up, off into the atmosphere. And that's what's causing the global warming. So all your global warming is up here. You're blocking the energy from leaving the planet. There's like your global warming up there. Where did that come from? That came from down here. So where do fossil fuels come from? It takes an awful long time. Ancient animals and plants become fossil fuels such as coal. So when you're burning gas and oil and coal in your house, you're really burning a really, really, really old dinosaur or something like that has fossilized and compressed under the surface, and we've sucked it out. And because it's carbon-based life forms like you are, and lots of them compressed over time, mixed up with carbon-based plants and so on, they're full of energy, and when you burn them, they produce great heat and energy that can go up into the atmosphere, that give us that heat and light and things like that. But all that energy, if it's not after we take the heat and light out of it, the rest is released into the atmosphere. Other ways of adding carbon from cows, so from cows, methane released from cows, and the animals eat the plants, release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and into the water. Photosynthesis then, so we've done this over here, we've released the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, then plants can take it back down. So plants can take it back down. They remove the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and after they've taken it down, they can dissolve some of it in the seas and lakes. And at least it's not in the atmosphere, it's in the seas and lakes. The trees themselves will give off some oxygen, but this is then used by animals and plants and released eventually back into the atmosphere. So initially, what the ideal scenario is that we release carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. Say if we pick 100 tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and we have then over this side enough trees to bring back down 100 tons. That's the ideal. The problem is what we're doing is we're actually putting about 10,000 tons, and obviously these aren't the correct numbers or anything like that, but we're putting up way too much up into the atmosphere, and we're taking away the amount of trees that can take it back down. So there's your cycle. If we were to start over this side here, and we were to say, right, the carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere, it comes down into the trees, down into the seawater, that goes down and down and down, becomes fossil fuels, and we burn it, and these are kind of your intermediaries here, your animals, your humans that are alive currently, that are releasing some and using some, and that would be your carbon cycle. The problem is the atmosphere insulates the earth, right? So your atmosphere, your ozone layer insulates the earth and keeps the heat in. If we build a greenhouse, what a greenhouse is used for is to keep the plants warm during the winter. And what a greenhouse does, it helps us trap some of the radiated energy from the sun, so it doesn't get out and the plants get cold. The plants growing in the greenhouse are warmer than if they were outside. Problem is, by releasing extra carbon dioxide, that acts like a blanket and keeps the temperature approximately 30 degrees warmer than if there was no carbon dioxide in the air at all. That's the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse effect is caused by carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide acts like an insulator. So when the energy comes from the sun, usually it hits the planet and goes straight back off into space. But what's happening is it's coming in, hitting the planet, and when it bounces back, it can't get out because of the extra carbon dioxide that we're putting into the atmosphere. Okay? Over the last 200 years, the concentration has increased. This is causing an average temperature of the world to increase. So we're trying to keep, the temperature is currently increasing up. This is the polar ice caps and so on, starting to melt. And global warming is this enhanced effect. So if you look at this paragraph here, it's kind of going into the natural greenhouse effect. So we want some of the carbon dioxide to be there to keep us a little bit warm. But what's actually happening is that there's too much carbon dioxide, so we're getting too warm. Polar ice caps melt, polar bears having to stand on, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Again, nice little video here to have a look at. But really, you're going to have to pause. You're going to have a good read, nice and slowly through this, and figure out how to draw the carbon cycle and what these different arrows mean. The idea is that they're always a cycle. So if you start at any one point, except for our center bit here, which can be a bit confusing because you have a lot of cows and a human in the middle. The rest of it is from the sun to trees, down below the riverbed, comes fossil fuels, burns off, and up into the atmosphere. Then back, either through rain or through photosynthesis, and the cycle goes again. And then, obviously, what happens when the whole thing falls apart, like we're seeing now with climate change. All right, so I'm posting this Tuesday morning, and you'll have until Thursday morning then for the following. So I've questions down below here. They're quite quick. They won't take you too long. They're based on the notes. If you have a stylus, you can answer them straight. You can answer them straight into your homework section here on OneNote. Otherwise, write them in the homework copy, take a picture, and post it here in OneNote. So if I go out here and I go down, I can see all your folders here. So if I go into Asher's there, and Asher has a homework section in his OneNote, and there's where he did the spacesuit and so on and so forth. Okay, so post it in there. Maybe make a new tab over here. So you have to call it today's date or lockdown week 1, lesson 1, something like that. So we know which one is which. It's your first thing to do. So a couple of questions on that. Second one to do in your notes copy, just to have in your own words and drawn the way you might be asked to draw it when it comes to a junior cert exam. Draw the water cycle and label it. Under your diagram, write in your own words what is happening as water passes around the cycle. Evaporation from the surface, condensation in clouds. So things like evaporation from the surface, condensation in the clouds, then what happens. I meant to put in, I'll put it in now, and do the same. Okay, do the same for the carbon cycle. So you have a couple of things to do. Answer a couple of questions, and into your notes copies, draw the water cycle and the carbon cycle, and in your diagram, write in your own words what's happening as it goes around the cycle. Because if you write it out and then have a look at what you've written, you'll start to be more familiar. I know you know the water one, but the carbon one as well. Now, I know you kind of teachers will be giving you all sorts of homework exercises, and as always, I won't give you homework on Thursday. So I won't give you homework in the second one. So if you want to leave this, so this is your homework for the week. So I wrote there that it's due for Thursday. But really, if you do it by the end of the week, I'll be happy, because I can imagine this distance learning is not easy and teachers will be giving you lots of stuff. So I'll be happy if this is done for Tuesday of next week, even though I have Thursday written on that, because you won't have homework this Thursday. Okay. Happy enough with that? Any questions at all? You just email me or stick a message on Schoology or whatever. If you haven't got the Schoology, Claudia got kicked out of the group or anything like that, let me know. And stay in contact with each other, mind yourselves. And I'll talk to you later on. Thanks.